Now, I think it goes without saying that the Marvel Universe is an incredible place, filled with whimsy and wonder, but unfortunately, that doesn't sell comics quite as well as dark and depressing content does. And you don't get more dark and depressing than the Marvel series known as Ruins, which was a 1995 miniseries. Because seriously, some of the stuff here is truly dark. So let's take a look at them. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are the 10 most disturbing scenes in Marvel Comics Ruins. Number 10. Jean Grey is a teenage sex worker. Ruins follows the story of former Daily Bugle reporter Phil Sheldon as he tries to piece together what went wrong in the universe. He has a deep belief that the world should not have turned out to be the awful disaster it currently is and decides to investigate the superhumans that may or may not have ruined the entire world. To the reader, it's obvious that these experiments/accidents are supposed to create heroes but have gone terribly wrong. For Phil Sheldon, though, he's trying to piece together why the world seems so deeply flawed. One stop on his journey is Washington, D.C. Here, Sheldon talks with Nick Fury about the state of the world when a clearly deranged teenage Jean Grey comes up to the pair and propositions herself for $20. It's an incredibly jarring moment that seems to come from nowhere and really communicates the dire status quo of this world. Jean is supposed to be one of the most powerful mutants alive, yet here she is just trying to survive, objectifying herself before she even has had a chance to grow up. Number 9. Galactus is a floating body in space. Now, Ruins is not simply Phil Sheldon's journey through the Marvel Universe gone wrong. Interspersed throughout the story are newspaper clippings that Sheldon has collected. These clips show the extended parts of the universe that are twisted by the gritty reality of life here. One of the most haunting newspaper clippings has a picture of Galactus, the purple planet eater himself, floating lifelessly outside of Mars's orbit. The accompanying headline reads, "God found dead in space," which perfectly summarizes the utter hopelessness of this world. While the picture itself isn't as gory or tragic as some of the other entries on this list, it is quite intimidating. You have to put yourself in the shoes of an everyday person seeing this image for the first time. You live your life only to be made aware that an incomprehensibly big, godlike figure just suddenly exists and could literally wipe out Earth in a second. And the only question left on your mind would be, what could kill a seemingly all-powerful creature like this? In the vast emptiness of space, there is so much we don't know. If the illusion of our own safety is shattered, all we can do is dread our own fragility. Number 8. Nick Fury and Captain America are cannibals. As mentioned before, Phil Sheldon makes his way to Washington, D.C. for an interview, and that interview was with super spy Nick Fury, who tries to kill Sheldon but ultimately decides to give him the information that he's looking for. Sheldon asks about people with special abilities and whether Fury thinks that things should have gone differently. Eventually, the topic turns to Captain America, and in a bizarre twist, Fury reveals not only did he personally eat human flesh, but Captain America was actually the one who introduced him to it. Like so much of this book, this detail is completely wild and utterly ridiculous and leaves the reader extremely disturbed. To think that Captain America, a character who is painted as the moral core of the Avengers, could have done something so heinous is painful to consider. To end the scene, Fury kills himself in front of Sheldon by shooting himself in the head, presumably because this world is just so bleak that Nick Fury couldn't find another reason to keep on living. Woof. Number 7. The Silver Surfer tore himself apart. While Sheldon is interviewing the KREE prisoner Captain Marvel, who you will definitely hear more about later, he is told the story of the Silver Surfer. Outside of Earth's orbit, the KREE found the eviscerated body of the Silver Surfer, his innards just floating around his corpse. You can really feel for the Surfer here. He's always been a character who struggles with isolation. He journeys the cosmos with only his surfboard and his thoughts, knowing that he is doing all he can to protect a universe that doesn't have much left for him. He puts himself up against enemies that dwarf his power set and routinely overcomes all of the odds just in the name of justice. But in this universe, it got to be too much for him. He was so desperate to feel anything that he tore himself open, killing himself in the process. Now, it is important to say that this in no way should be something that is glorified. The Silver Surfer's death here is horrific and terribly sad, and the fact that he did this to himself makes it all the more disturbing. Number 6. Emma Frost starts a cult. In Sheldon's notes, there is a picture of the Church of the Next Generation, who is led by Emma Frost. Frost stands smiling menacingly behind 5 children with visibly stitched scars on their bald heads. A handwritten note explains that instead of teaching young mutants, this universe's version of Emma runs a church that performs brain surgery on children to unlock their latent psychic potential. The church recruits parents and asks them to legally give up their children for adoption so that Emma can own them. They then have their parents give a dowry to pay for these surgeries in the hopes that their children gain superpowers. Most of the examples described in this list are accidents gone wrong or tragic outcomes to terrible events, but this is disturbing because there is just pure evil in this image. The faces of these children in clear misery hurts the very soul. And worse, this isn't an evil limited to just comics. Something like this could happen in our world as well, and that is supremely scary. Number 5. Mutants massacred in holding cells. In the Ruins universe, the United States is ruled by a leader named President X. This version of Charles Xavier apparently uses his telepathy to pacify dissidents against his rule and as such takes a totalitarian approach to governance. President X has also apparently created a prison for mutants, the conditions of which are obviously horrible. Phil Sheldon is allowed to see this prison under a guided tour by the warden Wilson Fisk. Fisk treats his prisoners as subhuman and several of Marvel's mutants are shown in heartbreaking circumstances. Nightcrawler has been reduced to a feral version of himself, Kitty Pryde has become permanently ghost-like, and Cyclops' eyes have been gouged out to prevent his optic blasts. In Marvel's main continuity, this mistreatment of mutants is exactly what the X-Men fight against, but here there are no heroes to fight for basic rights, and so it hurts to see them subjected to this. But the most disturbing of all is Quicksilver, who has had his arms and legs severed from his body. It is gruesome for gruesome's sake and shows these prisons are more about torture than anything else. Number 4. The KREE being put on a cancer-filled reservation. The KREE are an alien empire that have been in and out of conflict with Earth for years. The Ruins universe is similar in that the KREE are also coming to invade, but during their attempt, they ran into an issue. They found the Silver Surfer's body in the planet's orbit, which was giving off powerful cosmic energy that evidently interfered with the KREE warship's ability to sense a wave of nuclear defense missiles that was sent out by Earth. 90% of the ships were destroyed and the survivors were taken prisoner. Today, the remaining KREE have been placed in an internment camp next to a nuclear testing facility. And since their species has been so ravaged by nuclear exposure, just 1 in 8 of their children is born alive. The decay around them has cursed the KREE to a slow and incredibly painful death sentence. When Phil Sheldon interviews Captain Marvel in this camp, the captain says that he has been broken. He once stood against the KREE's will to invade, but now, seeing what Earth has done to his people, he regrets everything. Number 3. Bruce Banner becomes a tumor-filled monster. Phil Sheldon continues his journey to Chicago where he finds Rick Jones, a morphine addict living in squalor. Jones tells Sheldon the story of when he was in the American South and found himself on the base of a nuclear test site. He remembers a scientist rushing towards him yelling. At first, he assumed that it was just some angry guy warning him to not fall into a nearby trench. This was until a gamma bomb went off and the scientist saved his life by pushing him to safety. Of course, we know that that scientist was Bruce Banner and that this is the story of the Hulk gone sour. The gamma blast bombards Banner with radiation, and instead of becoming the Jade Giant, he gets the realistic effect of radiation, and that is extreme cancer. The Hulk is shown standing above Rick Jones, pulsating with tumors and eventually bursting. Even more disturbing, Rick suggests that the scientist was still alive when he was taken and is under observation in a government facility to this day. And not even Jones seems to have gotten out of this sacrifice safe, as it's implied that he now has debilitating cancer that has forced him into his morphine addiction. Number 2. Ghost Rider lighting his head on fire. Sheldon travels to Nevada to visit a carnival that has reports of superhuman activity. Here he finds Johnny Blaze, known as Saint Johnny around these parts. Saint Johnny has a very special trick, the nature of which Sheldon does not exactly know. In mainstream Marvel continuity, Johnny Blaze is the alter ego of Ghost Rider, but in this reality he's just a stuntman who becomes a more horrific version of the character. It slowly dawns on Sheldon what Johnny is about to do when he rides out on his motorcycle and the reporter can see the deep scars on his face. Blaze douses his head in gasoline, sets it alight, and rides his motorcycle out to the stunt course. This particular time, though, St. Johnny never returns as his motorcycle rides on with him dead at the handlebars. The art really sells the horror of what is happening, and you can't help but cringe in pain at what you see. Despite the fact that he never speaks, you can feel the desperation of St. Johnny, believing he has to be this version of himself. It's all very unsettling. And number 1, Spider-Man starts the Spider Plague. Peter Parker is supposed to be Spider-Man. He's supposed to be the definitive hero of the Marvel Universe, but in the Ruins universe, he is decidedly not that. His story starts off similarly, though. Peter Parker is a science student working at the Daily Bugle to pay for his college tuition when he makes a terrible mistake and is accidentally bitten by an irradiated spider. Instead of gaining superhuman abilities, though, he becomes patient zero of a newly created spider plague. Now, the art here is truly gruesome. Scars line Peter's body, horribly disfiguring them. And there is one panel in particular that has Peter terrified, cowering on the streets, suffering towards his inevitable demise. The Spider-Man we know and love has fought his whole career to fight against the spider menace, label that J. Jonah Jameson has given him, but in this reality, he truly is the menace that he's made out to be. And it's with this ending that we finally see why Phil Sheldon has been so painstakingly researching this book. He was Peter's co-worker at the Bugle and caught the virus before Peter knew it was contagious. Sheldon's contempt for Peter's foolishness is clear, and in the final page of Ruins, Sheldon uses his final thoughts to condemn the would-be hero. And there we go, my friends. Those were the most disturbing scenes in Marvel Comics Ruins. It would be wrong for me to say I hope you enjoyed that, but I hope that you got something from this. But if you want to chat to me further, you can do so over on Twitter at RetroJ with a 0, or you can swing by Live and Let's Dice, where I do all of my streaming outside of work, and it'd be great to see you over there. But before I go, I just want to say one thing. We dealt with a lot of dark and depressing content in today's list, but I want to end things on a note of positivity, and I hope that you're treating yourself well with love and respect, my friend, because you deserve all of the best things in life, alright? And do not let anything or anyone else tell you otherwise. Sometimes it can be very hard to see the goodness in humanity, especially with all of the events going on right now. But if you start with a bit of self-care and self-love, then it is so much easier to go out there with love in your heart instead of hate, and build bridges instead of burning them. Because at the end of the day, that is the only way we're going to move forward as a society, and that is together. So love yourself and your neighbour. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.